female entrepreneurs are taking over Harvard Square. Since 2006, there has been a rise in female-owned businesses in the square that is hard to miss. These ambitious and surprisingly young women are diverse in their personal and professional backgrounds, but they have one thing in common. They are small business owners. No easy feat in today's economy. Many of these women realize that even though Harvard Square is full of unique businesses, there were certain niches that were not addressed by any of them. Perla Brito Cuevas owns Tistic, a one-of-a-kind jewelry and accessory shop in the square. Brito Cuevas is from Taxco, the silver capital of Mexico. After going to school for entrepreneurship, Brito Cuevas decided to open a store that sold all handmade accessories from her hometown.
And the jewelry idea came about because I'm from Taxco in Mexico, where it's a place where most of the jewelry comes from. There's a lot of designers, a lot of artisans and things like that. So having grown up there, I knew like all these people around me, and kind of knew the style that they had. When I came into the States, I didn't see anything like that. And back in the day, like 10 years ago when I first came here, it was all mostly like for the jewelry. It was either like Claire's or it was like Tiffany's. Like there was like nothing in between.
Brito Cuevas isn't the only female entrepreneur who formed her business around a niche she saw as important for the square. While working at a clothing boutique, Rachel Wentworth and Meredith Donaldson, two women in their 20s, saw a want for a lingerie boutique in the square. Liza Shirazi worked at several cafes in the Boston area and saw a need for an independently owned cafe in the square. Wentworth and Donaldson went on to open 40 Winks, a stylish lingerie boutique, and Shirazi went on to open Crema Cafe, a now wildly popular cafe in Cambridge. Some savvy women have stepped up to be Harvard Square business owners because they recognized the opportunity when one of their favorite stores was going out of business. Ellie Mueller was a frequent shopper at vintage clothing store Una's Experienced Clothing since she was 14. When she found out the owner was having a hard time finding a buyer, she took the reins. She was only 23 at the time. Laura Donahue made a similar decision. She bought the Cambridge gem Bob Slate stationer from its owners because they were retiring.
It never crossed my mind to run a store. It just came up that I went into my favorite store, and my favorite store was an opportunity that I thought could not be missed. I thought it was an unmatched opportunity to jump into a business that was basically turnkey. I mean, it was already there. It was already working. It had a customer base. It had employees. It had a product line. It had vendors. It just needed somebody else to run it.
The new female business owners in Harvard Square opened shop for one of two reasons. They either saw a niche or they wanted to save their favorite store. Are there any other driving forces which are preparing or pushing young females to start their own businesses? One benefit all of the women seem to agree upon is the flexibility and freedom that comes with being the boss instead of the employee.
You have more flexibility if you want time off for whatever other aspects of your life might come along. If you want to have children, if you want to go back to school, you want to explore different options. Owning your own business is a way of sort of building that into your lifestyle, and it works really well as opposed to a kind of corporate culture where you are on someone else's time.
Laura Donahue at Bob Slate believes that owning a small business is more appealing to women because it is more personal and focused on relationships with customers, as opposed to the corporate world, which Donahue has years of first-hand experience with.
When you're in corporate life, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't. There's no connection to the outer world. And maybe that's something that appeals to women more, that world where you're talking to the customer.
Besides the personal benefits that draw females to choose entrepreneurship, these women believe there are cultural changes that have facilitated the process as well. For example, historically women have been expected to put more focus on family than their careers. Meredith Donaldson at 40 Winks has observed how women are opting to focus on their careers first and having children later.
I think that the whole dynamic of families is changing a lot. A lot of women are, career women now. I think it's different also in the cities. Women are having children that are, they're older now because they actually have a career. Again, especially in cities, I think that, women are, 37, 38, 40 and having kids now. They're not, having kids when they're in their 20s. It's kind of very, uncommon even.
Liza Shirazi at Crema Cafe believes the self-motivation of her generation plays a role in the rise of young entrepreneurs in Harvard Square.
I think our generation is a very motivated generation in the business sense, and they see people out there who've really been successful in doing their own thing. And I think that there's so many big national chains, and there's a lot of inner community support for local businesses. And I think that, you know, entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs, I think our generation is very different in terms of our work ethic and what we want to achieve and where we want to take that.
Flexibility, a personal feel, shifting roles in work ethic, and a rise in opportunity have all contributed to these young female entrepreneurs in the square. But there is one contributing factor that these women cannot forget: the uniqueness of Harvard Square.
Harvard Square has always felt to me like, hey, anything goes. Here it is. You want to try it? Give it a shot. Never crossed my mind for a minute that I couldn't try this or do this, that somebody would say, you aren't capable, which is something I put up with day to day in corporate life since my very, very beginning on Wall Street in the 80s. You know, you can't do this. You can't do this. Well, this is a man's job, really. You know, and once you're an entrepreneur, there's, you know, an occasional bank you're trying to get financing from who tells you you can't have money, but there's nobody to tell you you can't. And there's nothing about Harvard Square that even gives you the remotest sense of boundaries or limits or anything.
For the Boston Globe, I'm Emily Files.